Hello and welcome to Psychology Live. I'm Dr. Gail Majcher, and with me is Mary DiPaolo, limited licensed psychologist. And we're so glad that you're listening into our session today. We are going to be talking about divorce. Divorce is so prevalent. It happens to 1 out of 2 people. Many people end up with more than one divorce. And it is such a painful experience to go through, and it takes such a long time to heal from it, that we wanted to talk about several different aspects about divorce.
Right. We've been talking about our clients that we have who are, going through divorces without obviously sharing identifiable information. But there are certain things that we come to notice, kind of like an underlying theme in many of these cases that we want to be able to mention and bring up to you today that will be helpful to you, and hopefully resolving your problems and resolving your differences before you would take the step of separation or divorce. Because contrary to popular belief, the vast majority of divorce situations stem from resolvable or solvable problems. It isn't a situation where things are just so bad and so terrible that they can never be appropriately resolved or solved, because they can.
I think one of the really important topics that does not get talked about enough is how painful divorce is. Divorce cuts down to your quick. It just does. There's something that happens when 2 people marry where you're bound together, even when it's a terrible marriage and you really do have to end it. It still just breaks your heart. There's something that takes place, and it takes a long time to heal from that. I just had someone call me and who's going through a divorce and said, I'm in a fetal position on the floor of my house. I can't get up, and I thought I was doing so well. That's normal. You're going through a divorce. You're in so much pain that you do end up doing those kind of things, or being in the grocery store and starting to cry. This is all normal. The other part to divorce, before we get back to what Mary had mentioned, is that divorce has tentacles that go far out. It impacts the whole family system. It impacts your children. It impacts future grandchildren. It impacts holidays. It impacts finances. It impacts so much that goes far out that it's something that really each couple has to think about when they're thinking about divorce. It's not just about the 2 of them. It's about all the other people who are also involved in their lives, primarily their children, who will be impacted no matter what age they are. Whether they're babies or they're adults, they will still be impacted by divorce. Being a divorced person myself, I experienced all of this, so I know how difficult it is. And in my case, when I got a divorce from a violent person, there was no question. If someone's beating you, get out. And I know that's easy for me. Well, it's not easy for me to say, because I know how long it took and how many times I left and came back and left and came back. But there are reasons you have to. But if there are reasons where maybe you're just not communicating well, and you're both digging your heels in, and he's wrong and she's wrong, and there's fighting going on all the time, there's a good chance that those kind of issues can be resolved. Sometimes you hate your spouse. Many times when people come in for marriage counseling, somebody has already filed for a divorce. But they end up working it out. You can get love back even when you feel like, I hate that person and I don't love them. As long as there's no abuse, there's no addiction, there's no unfaithfulness. Okay, besides that, there's a good chance you can work on it. And so if you know how difficult divorce is, it's like, let's take that same energy and see if we can make the marriage work.
Mm-hmm. True. As Dr. Gail was talking, I was thinking about all the clients who have said to me over the course of time and space, it feels like a death, except they're still alive. Mm-hmm. And that's so true, because going through the literal death of a loved one is much easier than going through a divorce when that person you are divorcing, or who has divorced you, is still alive and free to be with someone else, marry someone else, have children with someone else. This is why divorce is so tragically destructive in its way, because it tears right through the middle of the very fiber of your existence and your children's existence if you have them, and also your extended family, your parents, his or her parents, the grandparents, the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, everybody is involved. So it does become very important to know and understand when separation can be used as a tool to help solve and resolve those problems that aren't the worst, that, like, for example, if there is sexual abuse, you don't stay, you get out.
That's right.
If there is a felonious criminal charge and conviction, you don't stay, you get out.
Clearly.
So there are certain reasons why divorce is absolutely without a doubt legitimate, but then there's all the reasons why divorce happens when it wasn't necessarily a lost cause.
Well, that's where marriage counseling can be very effective. We've talked about marriage counseling before. As a matter of fact, I think we've done some episodes on it, so you can look back on YouTube and find them. Marriage counseling tends to be very effective. In all the years I've been doing therapy, at least a third of my practice has been couples counseling, and the majority of the time, the couple can work out their issues. Now, with some of the issues that we've talked about that are deal breakers, marriage counseling is not going to work. You have someone who is beating on you and they come into therapy with you, it's not going to work. They won't stick out there anyway. They wouldn't. But it's important to talk about how difficult it is and how far out it goes. When I got divorced, my son had just turned 1 and my daughter was 3. So I raised them alone for all their lives. And that's a very difficult thing to do, and I always felt bad that they didn't have a father on the scene. But on the other hand, I didn't feel at peace about bringing another person on the scene. Mm-hmm. So there's all these dynamics that come in, and 1 out of 2 kids do end up in a single-parent home at some point in their lives. And then the other issue that comes in with that is then the blending of families. If you do get involved with someone who has children and you're trying to blend families, that takes a good 5 years for all of that to settle down. So I guess in this show, what we're really talking about is how difficult divorce is. In the next show, we're going to get a little more specific about it. But
are we already out of time?
Are we really?
I can't see the thing to see what the timing is, but see, wait a minute.
Oh my
gosh. 7:48. Well, anyway, let's put it this way. Divorce is really hard.
Yes.
And, one thing that I'd like to say before we move into the next show is that absolutely whatever your problems are, you have to be able to talk to somebody before you make this, what they call it, like a preemptive strike of,
right,
I'm divorcing you. You have to find out whether or not those issues and problems that you think are so horrific really and genuinely are to the point where they can't be solved, resolved, or dissolved.
And marriage counseling is a good starting point. But if your partner will not come in for therapy, then you go into therapy yourself and take a look at it. There are many times that we think all the issues belong to the other person, when in reality we're perpetuating issues too.
Right.
So, and we want to see that, because whatever we are doing that is not effective, we can change that if it's us. We can't change the other person. And
you learn also through marital therapy, even if you come in alone, what you absolutely are and are not willing to tolerate. Once you are able to identify very clearly what the issues or problems are, that may never indeed change, but now you have a choice. Do you tolerate that or not? Mm-hmm. I
remember when I went to marriage counseling for the first time, or counseling, I was in my early 20s with babies and a violent marriage. And I was telling the therapist my story, and she teared up, and I was shocked. It was like, oh my gosh, somebody gets it.
Right.
And they care.
And to be understood is so crucial in being able to have a clearer mindset about what it is that you're involved in or what it is that you need to do as your next steps. Because when you're in the middle of all that tumult, you don't think as clearly as when you're in the presence of someone who helps you to think more clearly. Yeah, being with someone who's objective makes a huge difference, because when you're in the middle of all that emotional angst,
it's really hard to see clearly. Okay, now I think we have hit our time limit, so
Okay.
we're going to end for today, but we're going to pick up on divorce again.
See ya.
See ya.